Hello, welcome to ICD-10 PCS, Hospital-Based Procedure Coding. In this set of video lectures, we're going to introduce you to the structure of ICD-10 PCS and discuss some finer details and things you need to be aware of as you work your way through the course. So some terms you'll need to know include such things as approach, the axis of classification, the body part versus the body system, the device, the qualifier, and most importantly, the root operation. Knowing the root operation is analogous to knowing what the main term is in diagnosis coding. So what do we do with PCS? PCS, the main thing to remember is it's for coding a procedure in any inpatient facility. We always think of this as acute care, but it also includes long-term care, skilled nursing facilities, and short-term care facilities. Key thing to remember, all ICD-10 PCS codes must have 7 characters. They are always alphanumeric, and they must always have 7 characters. If you have anything different than 7, you're doing something incorrectly. ICD-10 PCS codes may include any letter of the alphabet except the letters O and I. And the reason for this is we don't want to get confused between 0 and 1. And again, so what do these character positions mean for the 7 characters? In order, they deal with things in the following manner. The section of the PCS code book, in other words, is it medical, surgical, or what have you? The body system in which the procedure was performed. Think about whether it's cardiovascular, GI, what have you. And then finally, and I put this in red for you, the root operation. In other words, the category or type of procedure. We also need to know in the 4th character what body part it is. In other words, what site this procedure is taking place. And then the approach. The approach could be endoscopically through a natural opening, what have you. Some procedures have devices. So in other words, for instance, on a cardiac cath, you may have a stent. That's what we're talking about in terms of devices. And then finally, what we have is a qualifier. Qualifier being something that adds additional level of detail. So here's a good example, laparoscopic bypass radial vein to ulnar vein left using autologous tissue substitute. First character, it's going to be in the medical surgical section of the code set. It's going to be the upper veins and then root operation bypass, site brachial vein left. The approach is percutaneous endoscopic. 6th character is the tissue substitute. And then the 7th character gives us the upper vein for that level of detail. Like the ICD-10-CM codebook, we have terms being listed by the root operation, the body system, the body part, and common procedure names and eponyms. For example, Whipple procedure, hysterectomy. All these things are terms that appear in the alphabetic index. So you can see here hysterectomy is listed, then cross-referenced to a resection, right? So you can find these codes one of several ways. And again, here's what the code books look like. So you can see the first 3 characters. 0 is going to be medical and surgical. Body system is going to be the central nervous system and cranial nerves. And then the operation, bypass. And that's what we have for you. Please contact me if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you, and we'll see you online.